All right, what's up, everybody? This is Jesse Lewis with District Performance and Physio, owner, physical therapist. And since everybody's been locked down and quarantined, I've been trying to put out as much information as I can about how people can stay active, how they can stay healthy, both from a physical standpoint, fitness standpoint. But we also don't want to forget that some people, besides having a lot of stiffness and achiness, are dealing with also stress and anxiety, and it's all this new stuff that people don't know how to deal with. So instead of me giving you my ideas, I thought, why don't I just get an expert and bring his ideas to you? So I'm really happy bringing an awesome guest on today. His name's Dan Lyons. He's a psychiatric nurse practitioner with Reboot Behavioral Science. I'll let him tell a little bit about what he does, but he uses a combination of talk therapy and medication, and he really does awesome work. So I'm really happy to have him on. What's up, Dan? Welcome.
Hey, Jesse. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Yes, as Psych NP, as you already said, a combination of medication and as well as talk therapy. I use a lot of behavioral-based stuff. A specific modality that I use is ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy. I see a lot of stuff, and especially I'm glad you're having me on and that I get to talk about this because it's been on my mind for the past few weeks, not only feeling personally, but also with a lot of the folks that I work with. So
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really happy to have you on. So first, most important question. People are starting to run out of things to watch on Netflix. What are you watching right now on Netflix or whatever you're watching?
I have a few. I like to jump around a little bit, and it kind of depends on what my other half is interested on, and whether I'm going to go up to the other TV or not. I've been waiting very eagerly to start Ozarks, but the third season, of course. But I need to kind of get the right moment, because as soon as I start, it's going to be, I'm going to probably end up just watching it all the way through. I've really enjoyed, this sounds probably terrible because they don't do a good job at accurately picturing this very influential figure in my field. But the Freud show, they kind of butchered it a little bit, the whole story, and they sensationalized certain parts of his life, especially the cocaine stuff. And then they also made him into this detective, which he really, not to anybody else's knowledge that I've heard of, was he a detective. But it's an interesting story. There's lots of action and some gore and some fun stuff. So I've been enjoying that when I can. And I think that's probably much of it. And then, gosh, I could keep on going. Cut me off now.
I'm going to have to cut you off. We've talked enough that we know that you're going to have to focus you on a specific subject. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. So
Sure.
You've been talking to a lot of people for the last month, I'm sure. What's been the hardest thing or the most common thing people have been dealing with?
Yeah. I think uncertainty. And this is something that I've seen that's changed gradually as we're now 3 to 4 weeks into the COVID response. And so things are settling down a little bit, but when we first got started, there was a lot of uncertainty. People didn't know whether they were going to be in work, out of work, be able to do their work from home. Fortunately, a lot of my clients and patients are still employed but working from home, but that does not cover the wide variety of people in the area. There's folks in service industry, even the folks in the healthcare industry like yourself that still aren't really able to practice because of the COVID response and the need to social distance. And the uncertainty is, some of it's getting better as people adapt to it. So it might have felt, and you might have felt this too, really anxious at the beginning, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then as you kind of get into a little bit of a routine or rhythm, even if things aren't necessarily changed or gotten better, just knowing kind of what you have been doing, the little things, staying active on social media and stuff, and doing all the stuff that you've been working on, is just one way to kind of bring back some normalcy to things.
Yeah, for sure. I know myself, I still struggle with the uncertainty, right? Of, okay, we kind of understand a little bit more, but when are we opening back up? How do we open back up? What's going to happen when we open back up? So I definitely understand that uncertainty aspect. What's something somebody can do, if they're really struggling with, they just don't have control over things, or if they just aren't certain what's going to happen? What's something somebody can do to help with that?
Well, first of all, kind of try to take a breath, take a break, step out of their zone for a little bit. And oftentimes we find ourselves when folks are really anxious, caught up in their heads, either in the future, the uncertainty of the future, or like, I think now there's a lot of future anxiety, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then the other half would be the past. We see a lot of future stuff now. And if we're able to kind of get out of our heads a little bit and into the present moment, things that do that can help us feel a little bit better. And there's certain things that bring us in. I mean, working out is one of them. We use our senses, the physical sensation of lifting something, of doing jump rope, stuff like that. That helps us. There's a reason why people will cognitively feel different, is it brings us out of our heads forcibly, often, to pay attention to what's at hand. And that brief, however brief, or 45, 30 minutes, whatever, can bring us down. And even short of doing an exercise, you can do something like a mindfulness activity that might help you focus on the senses to bring you out of your head just a little bit so that you can gain some perspective. And from there, you can go, it might be a little bit, feel less daunting, feel less like you're trapped under something.
Okay. So mindfulness, I know a lot of people like kind of scoff at that a little bit, or they think, that's not for me, or that's too out there, or spiritual, or whatever you want to call it. Or I hear a lot of people say, I'm too stressed to be mindful, or I'm too anxious to be mindful, or they, so what's a way that someone can kind of like dip their toes into it a little bit if they're a little skeptical of that?
Sure. Yeah, it does get scoffed a little bit. When people come into my office, they're like, no, I don't do that. Like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And yet I'll still try. I might not push it right then, but I'll still try to sneak it in there a little bit. One of the activities that I like to introduce for folks that's pretty easy to use, utilizing the five senses, and I just call it a 5 sense activity. And you can use it anywhere from when you're driving or just sitting at home. And eyes open, eyes closed. A lot of times I might have people close their eyes, but you don't have to do that. And just thinking about and focusing in on each of the 5 senses, and what am I, what can I, what am I seeing? I'm sitting here. I'm fortunate enough to have these big windows here, so I'm seeing the waves, kind of the trees out of my peripheral wave a little bit. I can hear my dog. I don't know if you can see him in the corner here, but I can hear him breathing gently, and sometimes not so gently, or maybe licking a little bit. And this activity can be, I think it's best when you have something that you might want to taste with a drink, a cold beverage or a warm beverage. And if you go through this activity, let's say, drinking some water here, go through the 5 senses as you're doing that activity. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Is it cold or warm? What does it sound like? And even water has a sound as it's kind of sloshing a little bit. Is there ice in it? That kind of thing. And you might find, as you're doing it, you may be a little bit more relaxed, but you're also practicing this ability to bring your attention to something different and away from that which might be causing a lot of stress.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be like this whole spiritual big thing or anything like that. Okay, yeah, because I know a lot of people out there might be thinking like, yeah, mindfulness not for me, but give it a try. Take these small things that he's saying and try that.
Yeah, and I might add a way to get into it, in addition to this 5 sense activity that I just introduced. Washington Post just released an article over the paper. I think it was in the parents and kids section that they're doing. So that's a really nice introduction, and it was written towards like parents to do with their kids. So it's a really nice, straightforward way of doing it. That's a good jumping point, the Washington Post. As well as Calm and Headspace, both apps that offer free stuff, and you could even do mindfulness activity in YouTube that you can find some free stuff.
Okay, those are awesome. That's great. So, I've talked to a lot of people in the past month, and one thing that I'm hearing a lot from a lot of people is people are having good days and then all of a sudden they have a bad day. Or a lot of people are having a good hour and then out of nowhere they're having a bad hour and they're super stressed out, or they're crying out of nowhere, or it's just this really unpredictable. They don't know when they're going to have a good day and when they're going to have a bad day, or a good hour, bad hour. Why is that?
Yeah, I'd suggest it's probably due to the lack of having the schedule or having a routine of what we had before. So if you're at home, and I know you used to be, your schedules was, kind of like full and booked and you're always doing something. And without that, it not only is it taking away like something to focus your mind on, but it's taking this natural routine. And for folks that even, I know you like your job, but even if folks don't like their job, it still provides some type of structure to get them up at a certain time, out of the house at a certain time, kind of eating lunch at a certain time. And without that, our minds can be really out of sorts. So that's likely what it is. And as well as, so it can also come from the lack of productivity. Even if you don't like what you're doing, you might feel like a little bit, okay, well, I got through that terrible thing that I had to do for work and now it's done. You might feel good. And as well as much as success you might get from getting through a whole season of Ozarks, it's not, there's still just a little bit of like, I wasted 8 hours or however much time it is. I like TV, but it doesn't feel the same as like getting through, an activity that's a little bit more requires you to like kind of produce something. So I think that's part of
it. Okay. So let's say someone's, getting frustrated because they're not producing something. What's something that they can do to start to kind of get out of that pattern?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing that many people have is time. So, I get that you might want to be trying to work under some type of deadline, but if you're super stuck, getting up and it changes the scenery is likely going to be helpful. Trying to get it out of your head a little bit with some of the mindfulness stuff, the activity that I just introduced. And even just going outside, of course, doing all the CDC recommended things in terms of keeping safe. But fortunately, we still are able to go outside, and being inside, it's not uncommon if you think about it. People are spending 23 and a half hours, sometimes more, maybe 24, 23 hours in their apartment, in their homes. And if people like myself, live in an apartment, it's not like in the suburbs, or people in the, celebrities in their palatial estates where they might have 5,200 square feet or more to walk around in. So getting outside, I think, is going to be a really helpful thing as much as possible.
Okay. And I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but I think you kind of talked about this if someone's struggling with like that day-to-day thing, would you recommend, someone trying to like set a routine still if they're having trouble?
Yeah, absolutely. I think setting a routine is going to be incredibly helpful. Even if that routine, it doesn't have to include a whole lot. It could just be like, okay, I'm going to wake up around you can change it a little bit. If you don't have to be up till 10 or 11, you can sleep till 10, 11, but sleeping through the entire day might feel, kind of unproductive and like make you feel kind of sad later. So having some type of structure, even if it's flexible, it could be incredibly helpful. And you can put in the things that you want to do. I mean, your activity for the afternoon could be to watch the Ozarks. It could be to walk around, just take the dog for a longer walk. So having some type of schedule, even if there's some flexibility, I think is really helpful for folks.
You're dying to see the Ozarks, aren't you? You need to watch it.
I know. I think I'm obsessing. I'm going to have to start it. Maybe this is just like my unconscious coming through, that I'm annoyed that I haven't been able to watch it yet.
I think we're digging into your mind now.
I know. Well, that happens sometimes.
So, I mean, everybody's on social media right now. All anybody's doing. Is there anything you've seen on social media that is either really helpful, people should be looking out for, or is super unhelpful and they should try to avoid that type of thing?
Yeah, I think that part of the nice thing about the social media stuff is that it can make you feel like it can normalize some things. So people are talking about like, yeah, I've been just either watching TV or not really doing much, or those who have kids are like running around just trying to keep the household from falling down. And so it can make you feel like not alone, and that can be incredibly important. In terms of unhelpful stuff, it can also help like practical things. Like, for example, because I'm doing everything virtually now, my hair was getting a little out of control, and I was kind of resigned just to just try to deal with it. But I kept on seeing these posts on my feeds of people giving themselves haircuts. So I felt kind of motivated, but I was like, well, if these guys can do it, and so I did it. And as long as I don't show you the back, it looks great. But I face forward, so you don't need to worry about the back.
The back doesn't even matter.
So that can make No, it doesn't. And it's likely pretty terrible. So one of these days. Oh. In
Okay.
terms of, I don't know if I think you asked the potential negative.
Yep.
Too much of something can be really, really problematic. And if you get sucked into something, and the same idea of, when the mind can feel kind of crappy if something, it feels wasted. And we might have to remind ourselves, okay, there's not a lot for us to do, so spending an hour or so on social media might be fine. But if you did have things to do and you're spending time on social media, that might make you feel really crappy because you're not getting your work done. So putting some limits to social media access and or media access. I know for many of the people that I work with are really in tune to the news and social media. However, like too much can be really overwhelming and really, really stress inducing. So putting some limits, maybe consuming some amount of media, in the morning and lunch. And then if it's going to be in the evening, it's likely helpful to not engage in anything that's very over, overstimulating right before bed. So, if you're getting really upset with how the government's handling the COVID response, and you might want to do your news consumption earlier in the day and not within an hour or so before bed.
Okay, that's a great tip. I haven't heard that tip before, so that's good.
Of course.
So, you've mentioned a few things, but if you were going to tell people who are dealing with stress or anxiety or whatever they're dealing with right now, 2 things that they could start doing tomorrow to start dealing with that, feeling better, what would you say those 2 things are?
I think exercise is going to be really helpful within moderation, but getting outside if possible and if safe, and then exercising to some degree. I mean, at a minimum, I'd like to see people at least doing something for 30 minutes a day. And I think that might not, so some people might be like, oh, I'm not doing that. But other people, you might be, when you explain, if you think about what you usually do in a day, 30 minutes really isn't that much. So some type of exercise that includes it getting outside would be ideal. If not, then that's fine too. So exercise, and then I think I'm glad you had actually brought it up. Setting a schedule could be quite helpful. And then I would also talk about mindfulness, especially if people, if you're really anxious about stuff and you're not doing much, and even if you don't really buy into the mindfulness thing, what's to hurt? They haven't shown. There's lots of different kind of medications in the market, but everything has a side effect. I haven't seen any studies that show side effects of mindfulness. So I don't think it would hurt. It would be worth a shot.
Okay. Yeah. So you kind of cheated. That was 3 things, I think. But
I know.
We'll change it to 3 things. 3 things people do tomorrow: exercise, set a schedule, and try a small amount of mindfulness. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And just from the exercise standpoint, I've had a lot of people ask me, what's the best exercise? Should I do this? Should I do that? And, from my point of view, just anybody that's watching, don't overthink it. Exercise is exercise, whether it's a walk, whether it's walking up and down your stairs, just don't overthink it. Some exercise is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So, we've talked a lot about how to deal with stress, how to manage, some small amount of anxiety. That's going to help a lot of people. But what might be some signs that people are dealing with right now that they might need some professional help, and these small things
Sure.
aren't going to cut it?
Yeah, so everything kind of exists on a continuum, and some people, there's a natural amount of stress and anxiety that people will display or feel, and we don't want to say that any bit of anxiety is bad and you shouldn't feel it, because anxiety is a very natural part of life and the human existence. But if you find yourself that you're not able to function, it impairs function, you're not able to get through your day, even if you are working and you can't get out of bed, and having one off day, that might not be it. But if you're kind of day after day not able to do the tasks that you really need to do, and you've tried some of these interventions, then I think getting some help would be a good idea. And reaching out, whether it's to a therapist, is a really good place to start. We're all doing virtual stuff now. I think every colleague in the area that I've talked to has gone virtual. So, and with the virtual stuff, there's some more flexibility. So even if you were working all the time and you couldn't really fit in your schedule, you might be able to fit it into your schedule now. The other thing that so comes to mind is a lot of physical symptoms, is causing physical symptoms, signs of depression, and can include like depressed mood, thoughts of hopelessness and stuff like that. And gosh, I have to really be careful of the way I'm wording things when I talk to my patients now, because they're like, well, yeah, I feel like that way, we're stuck inside. But to a larger extent and disruptive, as well as physical signs. Depression can bring like alteration of like sleep patterns. And especially then people can get thrown off because they're watching TV or not, and there's no structure. But if it's even when they're trying to sleep and they're not able to sleep, that might be a sign that, some professional help would be in order.
Okay. And, I think there's a lot of, hesitancy from a lot of people to contact a therapist, or they think, there's, I'm sure you battle this with trying to get people to talk to you. What are some myths about your profession or talking to therapists that you kind of want to dispel to people right now?
Sure. I'd say that I think one myth is that only crazy people see therapists, or only, that's only for people who can't function. Okay, yes, I would argue that one strongly. And even if another one is that it has to go on for a long time, and that one, there are certain modalities that are like this long format of therapy, but not all modalities include that. And you could certainly explore that with somebody if you're looking for stuff. That might just be a few things. It is okay, and I've done this with a lot of folks, of just checking in on a few things, and then if you need something down the road, that you come back. So it doesn't have to be this like long commitment, and also your life doesn't have to be in shambles before seeing somebody. You don't have to hit like rock bottom and be like things are falling apart before you see someone. You might want to reach out before that, and so I think that those are two things. I might have even snuck in an extra one there.
Of course you did. That's what you do. This has been awesome, Dan. So I think one big thing I've taken away, everybody, is that you don't have to make big changes. Like even small changes can make a big difference. Like he talked about, just setting your schedule doesn't have to be super strict. It's just doing one thing, or, mindfulness can just be like paying attention to what you're hearing or what you're seeing. So is that right, Dan? Like just doing small things, it doesn't have to be like major things at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea is that we start with just a couple things. When I talk with folks and they're getting really excited, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And I'm like, hold on, slow it down. Let's start with something that is the kind of realistic. Is it realistic that you're going to do all of this by tomorrow? No. So what's realistic that you might be able to do in the next 30 to 36 hours? And, trying to make sure, like, is it realistic, and is it something that you want to do? Is it important to you? Just because somebody's saying that this is important, like, is it important to you? Because if you don't really care about something, you're probably not going to follow through with it.
All right, this has been absolutely awesome, Dan. You've given some awesome information that's going to help people. If people have more questions, or you've mentioned something that really strikes a chord with them, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Sure. Website. So I work for a practice called Reboot Science. That Reboot Science on just search that into a browser. Dr. Brett Howard started the practice. My business partner. He's currently on sabbatical in Japan, but I've been working to practice in the meantime. And we have a very similar philosophy to treating folks. So go there. You can also email me at daniel.lyons@rebootscience.com. But it's probably easiest just to hit Reboot Science in Google, and that'll take you straight there.
Great. Awesome. And if anybody does want that email, it's LYONS, just so you know.
Yes.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you watch Ozarks tonight, get that out of your head.
We'll have to try to get started.
I think we found something out about you today as well.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. I appreciate the opportunity.